The Great Hall of Nexus Prime buzzed with activity. Representatives from hundreds of worlds filled the massive chamber, their various forms creating a sea of colors, shapes, and sizes. Some walked on legs, others floated in liquid tanks, and a few existed as pure energy contained in special containers. This was the Galactic Council, where all major decisions about space travel and trade were made. Ambassador Zixathera adjusted her crystal body and looked at the giant star map floating above the council floor. Her species, the crystalline hegemony, had perfect memory. Every detail was stored forever in their crystal minds. As she studied the map, something bothered her. There was a hole. A perfect sphere of empty space sat in the map where stars should be. It was marked with simple words: Restricted Zone, Authority, Terran Confederation. No trade routes crossed it. No exploration missions were planned for it. It was as if that entire region of space did not exist. Zixathera had been to many council meetings. She had heard discussions about territory disputes between the Varanian Republic and the Mantis Collective. She had listened to long debates about mining rights in the Outer Rim, but never, not once, had anyone mentioned the humans or their space. She turned to Ambassador Glockstar, a large creature with 4 arms and green skin. "Tell me about the humans," she said. Glockstar's 4 eyes went wide. He looked around nervously. "Why do you ask about them?" "Their territory is marked on our maps, but we never discuss them. When did you last see a human ship?" "I have never seen one," Glockstar admitted. "My father might have long ago, but that was before my time." "How long ago?" 300 years, maybe more." Zixathera felt confused. 300 years was not long for most galactic species. Many lived for thousands of years. 300 years ago, she herself had been alive, but she could not remember any humans. She approached other ambassadors with the same question. The results were always the same. No one had seen humans recently. No one could remember the last time a human ship had left their territory. Most disturbing of all, no one seemed to think this was strange. Ambassador Thielva of the Aquatic Worlds was older than most. Her people lived in water-filled suits and had been part of the council for over 1,000 years. Surely she would remember. "Honored Thielva," Zixathera began, "I seek knowledge about the Terran Confederation." The water in Thielva's suit turned a darker blue. "That is an old name, young Crystal. Why do you ask?" "Their space is marked as restricted, but I cannot find records of why." Thielva was quiet for a long time. The water in her suit swirled slowly. "Some things are better left forgotten, Ambassador. The humans prefer to be alone. We respect their choice." "But why? What happened?" "Nothing happened," Thielva said quickly. "They simply chose isolation. We must respect that." But Zixathera's crystal memory caught something in the old ambassador's voice. Fear, and something else. Guilt. That night, Zixathera searched the council's data files. She found trade records, exploration reports, and military logs going back thousands of years. But information about humans stopped abruptly, 312 years ago. Before that date, humans were mentioned often. They had been active, traders and explorers. They had conflicts with some species and friendships with others. They seemed normal. Then nothing. She found references to something called the Sol Incident and the Terran Demonstration, but the files were classified. Her ambassador codes were not high enough to access them. The next day, she tried a different approach. She visited the archives of species that had been powerful 300 years ago. The Zephyrian Empire had been the strongest military force in the galaxy back then. Surely their records would mention humans, but there were no Zephyrian records, no Zephyrian Empire, no mention of them anywhere except in very old history files that said they had ceased to exist 312 years ago. The same time humans had stopped leaving their space. Zixathera felt a chill run through her crystal body. Species did not just cease to exist. They were conquered, or they evolved, or they joined other groups. But the Zephyrians had simply vanished. From all records, she decided to ask the oldest being she knew. Elder Krevol was so ancient that his species had forgotten his exact age. He remembered the formation of the Galactic Council itself. If anyone knew the truth, it would be him. She found the Elder in his private chambers, a dark room filled with ancient artifacts. Krevol looked like a tree made of metal with branches that moved like arms. "Elder, I seek wisdom about the humans." The metal tree's branches stopped moving. The room became very quiet. "You should not ask about them, young one." "But why?" "What is the great secret that everyone fears to speak?" Elder Krevol's voice became very sad. There is no secret. Only a choice made long ago. The humans asked to be left alone. We agreed. It is better this way. Better for whom? For everyone. For them, for us, for the galaxy itself. Elder, I have found that the Zephyrian Empire disappeared at the same time humans stopped traveling. This cannot be coincidence. The old being was quiet for so long that Zixthara thought he had fallen asleep. Then, very quietly, he spoke. You have a dangerous curiosity, Crystal Child. The Zephyrians learned that some things should not be disturbed. They paid the price for that knowledge. What price? Everything. Elder Krevol would say nothing more. But as Zixthara left his chambers, she heard him whisper to himself, I pray the young ones never learn what we learned. I pray they never force us to remember. Over the following days, Zixthara noticed something else. Whenever she mentioned humans, conversation stopped. Other ambassadors found reasons to leave. Even her own people began to avoid her. But she also noticed something in their eyes. Fear, yes, but also relief. Relief that someone else was asking the questions they were afraid to ask. Finally, Ambassador Yxandra of the Peaceful Garden Worlds approached her privately. Stop asking about the humans, she said softly. Why? What happened to them? Nothing happened to them. That is the problem. I don't understand. Yxandra looked around to make sure they were alone. The humans are still there in their space. All of them. They have been there for 300 years and they have never left, not once. Do you understand what that means? Zixthara thought about it. A species that never left their territory for 300 years. A species so powerful or so dangerous that the entire galaxy agreed to leave them alone. A species whose very existence was treated like a forbidden topic. They are prisoners, she said slowly. No, Yxandra whispered. We are. Before Zixthara could ask what that meant, Yxandra hurried away. That night, Zixthara made a decision. She would find others who shared her curiosity. Other young species who had not learned to be afraid. Together, they would seek the truth about the humans and their silent border. She did not know that her decision would soon force the galaxy to remember something it had spent 3 centuries trying to forget. She did not know that some borders existed not to keep people in but to keep nightmares from getting out. But she was about to learn. 6 months after her discoveries on Nexus Prime, Zixthara stood on the bridge of the exploration ship Bright Dawn. Around her were representatives from 3 different species, all young races who had joined the Galactic Council within the last 500 years. The Varanian Republic had provided the largest ships. Their people looked like tall, thin humans with blue skin and 4 arms. Admiral Vexitani commanded the fleet from his flagship, Stellar Pride. The Varanians were proud warriors who had never lost a war. The Neo-Centauri Alliance brought their scientific expertise. These beings were made of pure energy and lived inside special mechanical bodies. Their leader, Research Director Kim Tell, controlled 12 different robot forms at once. They were curious about everything and feared nothing. The Hive Collective of Kepler 442 offered their numbers. Millions of small, insect-like creatures worked together as one mind. Their queen voice, speaking through 1,000 bodies at once, wanted to understand why an entire region of space was forbidden. Together, they had assembled the largest exploration fleet seen in 2 centuries. 50 ships filled with scientists, diplomats, and peacekeepers. They brought gifts for the humans, art from 1,000 worlds, mathematical proofs, music, and offers of friendship. We are not here to fight, Admiral Vextani announced to his fleet. We are here to make friends. The humans have been alone for too long. It is time to welcome them back to the galactic community. But as they approached the edge of human space, older species tried to stop them. The crystalline hegemony sent urgent messages. The aquatic worlds offered to pay them to turn back. Even the peaceful garden worlds begged them to reconsider. Turn back, came a message from Elder Krevol himself. You do not understand what you are approaching. Admiral Vextani was insulted. We are not children. We have fought the plague, wars, and survived the dark matter crisis. What could one small species do that frightens the entire galaxy? But as they crossed into human territory, the fleet grew quiet. Space here felt different. The stars seemed dimmer, as if something was watching them from the darkness between worlds. For 3 weeks, they traveled deeper into human space. They sent messages of peace in 17 different languages, including the archived human tongues. they had found in old databases. They broadcast music, mathematical constants, and pictures of their homeworlds. There was no response. The ship's sensors detected no artificial signals, no spacecraft, no signs of civilization. It was as if human space was completely empty. Maybe they all died, suggested Research Director Kim Tell. Maybe we are worried about ghosts. Maybe they are hiding, said Queen Voice through 100 small bodies. Maybe they are afraid of us. Admiral Vexitani shook his blue head. No species hides for 300 years. We will continue until we find them. Then, at the very edge of a small solar system, their sensors detected something. A single ship, no larger than a shuttle, moving toward them at impossible speed. Tadiao. Small ship stopped directly in front of their massive fleet. It was old-looking, made of simple metal and ceramic, with no visible weapons or shields. According to their scans, it contained only one life form. "This is Commander Sarah Chen of the Terran Confederation," came a voice over their communication system. The voice sounded tired, like someone who had been waiting for something terrible to happen. "You are in violation of the Galactic Accords of 2387. You must turn back immediately." Admiral Vexitani smiled. "Finally contact. Greetings, Commander Chen. I am Admiral Vexitani of the Varanian Republic. We come in peace. We bring gifts and offers of friendship from the Galactic Council." There was a long silence. Then Commander Chen spoke again, and her voice was filled with sadness. "Admiral, you have no idea what you're approaching. I am authorized to give you one warning. Turn back now. Do not make us do this." Research Director Kim Tell activated his diplomatic protocols. "Commander Chen, we understand your people value privacy. We respect that. But 300 years of isolation is too long. The galaxy has changed. We have grown more peaceful. There is no reason to fear contact anymore." "Fear." Commander Chen's laugh was bitter. "Admiral, you misunderstand completely. We are not afraid of you." The words sent a chill through the alien fleet. If the humans were not afraid, then why the isolation? Why the warnings? Admiral Vextani tried again. "Commander, we have authorization from the Galactic Council itself. We represent over 200 species in friendship. Surely we can discuss this peacefully." "The Council," Commander Chen said quietly. "Do they remember why the accords were signed? Do they remember what happened to the last people who ignored our warnings?" "The Zephyrians?" Zixthara asked from her position on the bridge. "What happened to them?" Another long silence. When Commander Chen spoke again, her voice was full of pain. "The Zephyrians happened to us first. 14 worlds, 8 billion people. They thought we were weak because we were new to space. They thought a quick genocide would solve their problem." The alien fleet exchanged worried glances. Genocide was the greatest crime in galactic law. If the humans had been victims of genocide, that explained much. "We are sorry for your loss," Admiral Vextani said formally. "But that was long ago. The Zephyrians are gone now. We are not them. We mean no harm." "I know you're not them," Commander Chen said. "The Zephyrians are gone because we made sure they could never hurt anyone again. Ever." The way she said it made the alien crew shiver. There was something final in her voice, something that spoke of terrible certainty. Research Director Kim Tell processed this information through his electronic mind. "Commander, are you saying that humans destroyed the Zephyrian Empire?" "I am saying," Commander Chen replied carefully, "that after the Zephyrians attacked us, they ceased to exist. Make of that what you will." Queen Voice spoke through 1,000 throats at once. "But they ruled 2,000 systems. They had trillions of citizens. How could one species destroy an entire empire?" "Very carefully," was all Commander Chen would say. Admiral Vexitani was beginning to understand why the galaxy feared humans. A species capable of destroying the most powerful empire in galactic history was indeed dangerous. But that was old history. Modern warfare had rules. There were treaties and laws now. "Commander Chen," he said formally, "we acknowledge your people's past suffering. We understand your caution. But we are not your enemies. We come with peaceful intentions and proper authorization. We request permission to continue to your home system for formal diplomatic contact." The silence stretched for several minutes. When Commander Chen spoke again, she sounded incredibly sad. "Admiral, I have spent 40 years at this border. I have given this warning to 7 different expeditions. Most listened and turned back. Some needed more convincing. But you're the first to invoke formal diplomatic protocols. Then you understand we cannot simply leave, Admiral Vexitani said. We have a duty to our peoples. And I have a duty to mine, Commander Chen replied. I hoped it would not come to this. The small human ship began to broadcast a signal deeper into human space. The transmission lasted only seconds, but every sensor on the alien fleet detected it. What was that? Research Director Kim Tel asked. A message to my superiors, Commander Chen said. I have told them that contact is imminent. I have told them that the galactic community no longer remembers why we chose isolation. Admiral Vexitani felt the first real hint of worry. Commander, what does that mean? It means, Commander Chen said quietly, that they will have to remind you. The human ship's engines suddenly flared bright. Before anyone could react, the small vessel exploded in a flash of nuclear fire. Commander Sarah Chen, who had spent 40 years guarding the border between human space and the galaxy, chose to destroy herself rather than let the alien fleet pass unchallenged, but her sacrifice had served its purpose. The message had been sent. Deep in human space, something had received word that the galaxy no longer remembered the lesson it had learned 300 years ago. And in the darkness between stars, ancient systems began to wake up. The alien fleet continued forward, shaken by Commander Chen's sacrifice but more determined than ever to make contact with humanity. They did not understand that they had just witnessed the last act of mercy they would receive. Behind them, the wreckage of the human ship drifted in space, a small monument to the final guardian who had tried to save them from what they were about to discover. The alien fleet traveled deeper into human space for 2 more weeks after Commander Chen's sacrifice. Admiral Vextani expected to find a few dozen worlds, maybe 100 at most. The old record suggested humans had been a small species, limited to about 50 systems when they disappeared from galactic contact. He was wrong. The first sign that something was different came when their long-range scanners detected artificial structures around every star in the region. Not just planets with cities, but massive constructions that surrounded entire stars like metal shells. Dyson spheres, whispered Research Director Kim Tel through his electronic voice. They have built Dyson spheres around their stars. Zixtheras. Crystal memory banks searched for references. Dyson spheres were theoretical constructions that captured all of a star's energy. The engineering required was beyond most species. Even the great galactic powers had managed only partial Dyson swarms around a few stars. But as they traveled further, their sensors detected complete spheres around star after star, hundreds of them. Each one capturing the total energy output of a sun, providing power on a scale that dwarfed entire galactic civilizations. How many people would need this much energy? Asked Queen Voice through her 1,000 bodies. Research Director Kim Tel ran calculations through his digital mind. More than live in our entire sector of the galaxy. Much more. But that was only the beginning. As they approached the first inhabited system, their sensors went wild. What they saw defied everything they knew about planetary engineering and physics. The planets were gone. In their place were artificial constructs the size of worlds but clearly built rather than formed. Geometric shapes that gleamed with perfect metal surfaces orbited the captured star in precise formations. Some were spheres covered in towers that reached into space. Others were vast rings spinning to create artificial gravity. A few seemed to be made entirely of light, existing as pure energy held in planet-sized containers. Impossible, breathed Admiral Vextani. You cannot build planets. You cannot create matter from nothing. But the humans apparently could. As the fleet watched, small ships moved between the artificial worlds, but these ships were enormous, each one larger than the alien fleet's flagship. They moved without visible engines, bending space itself to travel. Admiral, reported his sensor officer. I am detecting population readings. How many? The officer checked his readings 3 times before answering. Approximately 400 billion beings in this system alone. The alien fleet fell silent. 400 billion people in one system. That was more than the total population of most species. And this was just one system. If every star in human space was like this? Take us to the next system, Admiral Vexitani ordered. The next system was even more incredible. Here the humans had taken apart not just planets but asteroids, moons, even small stars. The material had been used to build structures that stretched across the entire solar system. Ribbons of metal and crystal connected artificial worlds in a vast web. Streams of pure energy flowed along these connections like rivers of light, and everywhere there were people. The alien sensors detected trillions of individual life signs, but they were wrong. These were not exactly life signs as the galaxy understood them. Some of the humans seemed to be made of metal and circuits. Others appeared to exist as patterns of energy that moved through the crystal networks. Still others were so large that their individual thoughts registered as separate beings to the ship's computers. What have they become? Zixathera asked in wonder and horror. They got their answer when something spoke to them. It was not a radio transmission or a communication laser. The voice simply appeared in their minds, speaking in perfect translations of their own languages. "Welcome to human space," the voice said. It sounded like thousands of people speaking at once, but in perfect harmony. "We are the Sol Consensus. We have been expecting you." Admiral Vextani tried to respond through normal communication channels, but the voice continued before he could speak. "You do not need to use your primitive radio systems. We can hear your thoughts from here. Please do not be alarmed. We will not invade your minds without permission. We are simply larger than you are used to." "What are you?" Research Director Kim Tell asked, his electronic mind racing to understand what they faced. "We are human," the Sol Consensus replied. "We have always been human. We have simply grown beyond the limitations that once contained us." The alien fleet found themselves moving without activating their engines. The Sol Consensus was gently guiding them deeper into the system, past wonders that hurt their minds to contemplate. "Your Commander Chen tried to warn you," the voice continued, sadly. "She was a good person. She volunteered to spend her life at the border protecting both you and us from this moment." "Protecting us from what?" Admiral Vextani demanded. "From learning what we have become. From understanding why we chose isolation. They passed a structure that defied physics, a space station that existed in several dimensions at once, its corridors leading to places that should not exist. Through the transparent walls they could see humans working inside. But these humans were impossible. Some were giants made of living metal. Others were clouds of intelligent gas. A few appeared to be small stars that had learned to think. "We achieved what your species call a technological singularity," the Sol Consensus explained. "But we did not lose our humanity in the process. We remained recognizably human, creative, curious, protective of our families, and capable of great love." The voice paused, and when it continued there was something dark in its tone. "But we also remained capable of great anger, great hate, great violence. Do you understand what that means?" Queen Voice spoke through her 1,000 throats, each one trembling. "You became gods who still think like mortals." "Exactly," the Sol Consensus said. "We transcended death, disease, even the limitations of physics itself. But we kept our human hearts, our human minds, our human instincts, including the instinct that says when someone kills your children, you make sure they can never do it again." The alien fleet was now approaching the Sol system itself, the birthplace of humanity. What they saw there was beyond their ability to comprehend. The sun was surrounded by structures that seemed to exist partially outside normal space. Planets had been turned into vast computer systems that processed information at the speed of thought. The space between worlds was filled with energy patterns that looked almost alive. "How many of you are there?" Zixathera asked. "That is a difficult question," the Sol Consensus replied. "Do you count each individual body? Each separate consciousness? Each backup copy of our minds? We stopped counting at several trillion, and that was 200 years ago." Admiral Vexitani felt a cold fear growing in his chest. Several trillion beings, each one potentially as advanced as gods, all still thinking like humans, all still capable of human emotions. "What do you want from us?" he asked. "Nothing," the Sol Consensus said, and the sadness in the voice was overwhelming. "We want nothing from the galaxy. We never did. We asked only to be left alone so that we would never again be forced to show you what we are capable of. But we came in peace," Research Director Kim Tell protested. "We brought gifts. We wanted to be friends." "We know," the Sol Consensus replied. "Your intentions are pure. Your hearts are good. But you have violated the one law that keeps the galaxy safe. You have entered human space without permission." The alien fleet found their ship's systems being gently taken over. Not damaged, not destroyed, simply controlled. Every weapon, every engine, every life support system now responded to the Sol Consensus rather than their crews. "What are you going to do to us?" Admiral Vexitani asked. "We are going to show you," the voice said. We are going to show you what Commander Chen died trying to protect you from. We are going to remind you why the galaxy agreed to our isolation. The controlled ships began to move toward Sol itself, toward the heart of human space where the truth about humanity's transformation waited. And then, the Sol consensus said quietly, "We are going to let you go home, so you can tell the others, so they can remember why some boundaries must never be crossed." As they approached the innermost system, Admiral Vextani realized that the real horror was not what humanity had become. The real horror was that they had become gods while remaining fundamentally, recognizably human. And humans, he was beginning to understand, could be the most terrifying beings in the universe when they decided someone had gone too far. The alien fleet drifted helplessly through the Sol system, their ships controlled by forces beyond their understanding. Around them, the impossible structures of post-human civilization stretched across space like a fever dream of engineering and impossible physics. Then, without warning, space itself seemed to fold, and a being appeared before them. It was not a ship or a robot or an energy pattern. It was a person, or had been once. The figure looked like an elderly human male, wearing simple clothes that seemed to be made of starlight. He stood in the vacuum of space as if it were solid ground. And when he spoke, his voice reached them without radio or telepathy. "I am Dr. Marcus Webb," he said with a polite smile that was somehow more terrifying than any weapon. "I died of old age 847 years ago, but I continue to serve as the current speaker for Terran Space Defense. I want you to know that I am genuinely sorry about what comes next." Admiral Vextani tried to activate his ship's weapons, but nothing responded. Dr. Webb noticed the attempt and shook his head sadly. "Admiral, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. You represent a clear violation of the Galactic Accords of 2387, specifically the non-interference clause regarding human space. I am authorized to demonstrate why this clause exists." "We came in peace," Admiral Vextani shouted. "We brought gifts. We wanted to establish diplomatic relations." "I know," Dr. Webb replied. "I can see your hearts, Admiral. You are good people with honorable intentions. That's what makes this so tragic." Research Director Kim Tell activated every sensor his mechanical body possessed, trying to understand what they faced. "What are you? How can you exist in space? How can you control our ships?" Dr. Webb smiled the patient smile of a teacher explaining something simple to a confused student. "I am human, Director Kim Tell. I have always been human, I simply learned to think bigger." The dead scientist gestured and the alien fleet began to move. Not just their ships, but everything. Their weapon systems, their life support, their gravity generators. Every piece of technology responded to Dr. Webb's will as if it were part of his own body. "You see?" He continued conversationally as he piloted 50 alien starships with a thought. "When the Zephyrians killed our children, we realized we had a problem. We were too weak to protect ourselves, so we decided to become stronger." The UA fleet passed through a region of space that shouldn't exist, a place where the stars formed geometric patterns, and the darkness between them pulsed with living light. Through their sensors, the aliens could see humans working in this impossible realm. Humans who had become living equations solving problems by existing. Humans who had turned themselves into pure thought, backed up across multiple dimensions. "We didn't just develop new technology," Dr. Webb explained. "We became technology. We didn't just learn to manipulate matter and energy. We became matter and energy. But we never stopped being human." Queen Voice spoke through her 1,000 bodies, each one trembling with terror. "But humans are limited. Humans make mistakes. Humans feel anger and hate and fear." "Exactly," Dr. Webb said, and his smile grew sad. "We became gods, but we kept our human hearts. Do you see the problem?" They passed a construction site where humans were building new universes. The aliens watched in horror as their captors casually created pocket dimensions, each one filled with stars and planets and the potential for life. It was done as easily as planting a garden. "Show them the garden," came the voice of the Sol consensus from everywhere and nowhere. Dr. Webb nodded and guided the fleet toward a region of space that glowed with soft, beautiful light. As they approached, the aliens could see what looked like a normal solar system. A yellow star with several planets, including one blue world that looked almost exactly like the legendary Earth from human history. "This is one of our memory gardens," Dr. Webb explained. "We built it to remember what we used to be. Every plant, every animal, every grain of sand is exactly as it was on Earth before we transcended. The blue planet was perfect. Oceans sparkled in the sunlight. Clouds drifted. Across continents covered with green forests and golden fields, it looked like paradise. "It's beautiful," Zixthera whispered. "It's a tomb," Dr. Webb replied. "We built it to remember the 8 billion people the Zephyrians murdered. Every human who lived on that world is memorialized here. Their thoughts, their dreams, their personalities, all preserved in quantum crystal matrices that will exist until the heat death of the universe." Admiral Vexistani felt a chill run down his spine. "You remember all of them?" "We remember everything," Dr. Webb said. "Every child who cried for their parents as the orbital bombardment began. Every parent who tried to shield their family from the plasma fire. Every elderly person who died alone as their cities burned. We remember it all. Perfectly. Forever." The fleet moved past the memorial world towards something that made their instruments scream with impossible readings. It was a space station that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously, its structure folding through realities that shouldn't touch each other. "This is where we keep the backups," Dr. Webb explained. "Every human who has ever lived, every human who will ever live, every human who could possibly live, all stored in quantum matrices that exist outside of space and time. We are functionally immortal now. Death is merely inconvenient." Research Director Kim Tell processed this information through his electronic mind and felt something that could only be called digital terror. "You cannot be destroyed." "No, Doctor," Webb agreed. "We cannot. We tried to explain this to the Zephyrians, but they didn't listen. They thought conventional warfare still applied to us. They thought that destroying our physical bodies would end the threat we represented." The fleet passed through a region where space-time itself was twisted into art. Gravity waves formed beautiful sculptures that existed across multiple galaxies. The cosmic microwave background radiation had been shaped into vast murals that told the story of human history. Even the fundamental forces of physics had been turned into instruments of expression. "We are not just individuals anymore," Dr. Webb continued. "We are a species consciousness that spans multiple universes. When you talk to one of us, you talk to all of us. When you hurt one of us, you hurt all of us." Admiral Vextani was beginning to understand the true scope of what they faced. "How many universes?" "We stopped counting at 47,000, Dr. Webb replied casually. "We've been busy." They approached the original Earth, the birth world of humanity. But it was no longer a planet in any sense the aliens could understand. It had been transformed into something that existed primarily as information, its matter arranged into computational matrices that processed thoughts at the speed of light. The entire planet had become a single vast mind. "This is where we make our decisions," Dr. Webb explained. "Every human who has ever existed contributes to our collective wisdom. We are not a hive mind. We remain individuals. But we can think together when we need to." "What kind of decisions?" Zixthera asked, though she was afraid of the answer. "Whether threats to humanity should be eliminated," Dr. Webb replied simply. The alien fleet was brought to a stop in orbit around the transformed Earth. Below them, the planet pulsed with thought patterns that registered on their sensors as a single, impossibly complex consciousness. "We are going to ask you a question now," Dr. Webb said, "and you are going to answer honestly because we can see the truth in your minds whether you speak it or not." The transformed planet began to glow brighter, and the aliens felt something. Fast and ancient turned its attention toward them. It was like being examined by a microscope the size of a galaxy. "Why did you come here?" asked a voice that was the sound of 800 billion human minds, speaking in perfect unison. "Admiral," Vextani tried to answer but found he could only speak the absolute truth. "We were curious, we wanted to make friends, we thought the isolation had gone on too long." "Did the galaxy send you?" "No. We came on our own. Most of the other species tried to stop us." "Do you understand why they tried to stop you?" "Admiral," Vextani looked around at the impossible construction surrounding them, at the dead scientist who controlled their ships with a thought, at the planet that had become a god, "because they were afraid of you." "No," the voice corrected gently, "because they were afraid for you." Dr. Webb gestured, and the space around them filled with holographic images. The aliens saw the truth of what had happened 3 centuries ago, the Zephyrian attack, the genocide of human worlds and humanity's response. But they also saw what came after, The period of rage and grief and terrible decision-making that had followed. They saw humans in their fury doing things that even they now regretted. They saw the complete, absolute annihilation of not just the Zephyrian Empire, but of every trace that they had ever existed. We deleted them, Dr. Webb explained quietly. Not just their ships and their worlds and their people. We deleted them from causality itself. We reached back through time and unraveled every choice they had ever made, every thought they had ever thought, every moment they had ever existed. The aliens stared in horror at the holographic records of universal-scale revision of reality itself. It took us 57 years to develop the capability, the collective voice continued. 57 years of focused human ingenuity and human determination and human rage. As the alien fleet moved toward the edge of human space, Dr. Marcus Webb appeared one final time on their ship's view screens. The ancient human scientist looked tired, as if carrying the weight of 8 centuries had finally begun to show. Before you leave, he said quietly, there is one more thing you must understand. You must know the complete truth about what happened 312 years ago. Your galaxy has spent centuries trying to forget, but forgetting is what led you here. Admiral Vexitani felt a deep dread settle in his chest. They had already seen impossible things, learned terrible truths. What could be worse than what they already knew? The records you will find in your databases are incomplete, Dr. Webb continued. They tell you that the Zephyrian Empire was destroyed. They do not tell you how it happened or why it had to happen that way. The view screen changed, showing images from the deep past. The aliens saw humanity as they had been 3 centuries ago, a young species, aggressive and curious, like so many others. They had discovered faster-than-light travel only recently and were eagerly expanding into the galaxy. We were proud, Dr. Webb said sadly. We thought we were destined for greatness among the stars. We had colonized 37 systems in less than 200 years. Our population had grown to nearly 50 billion across all our worlds. The images showed human cities on distant planets, space stations orbiting alien suns, generation ships carrying families to new homes. It looked like any successful expanding civilization. Then we met the Zephyrians. The screen showed the first contact. Zephyrian ships were beautiful, crystalline structures that seemed to sing as they moved through space. Their people were tall and graceful, with skin that changed color based on their emotions. They had ruled 2,000 star systems for 10,000 years. The first meetings went well, Dr. Webb narrated. Cultural exchange, trade agreements, scientific cooperation. The Zephyrians seemed to welcome us to the galactic community, but the images began to change. Zephyrian faces growing cold, human diplomats being turned away from meetings, trade ships being refused docking rights. The Zephyrians had a philosophy, Dr. Webb explained. They believed that the galaxy could support only a limited number of truly successful species. They saw new civilizations as threats to the established order. Queen Voice spoke through her 1,000 bodies. They feared being replaced. More than feared, Dr. Webb replied. They had built their empire by eliminating promising young species before they could become rivals. Over 10,000 years they had committed dozens of genocides. They called it galactic gardening. The aliens in the fleet felt sick. They had heard whispers of ancient crimes, but the Zephyrian Empire had been spoken of as a golden age of galactic civilization. When they decided we were growing too quickly, too successfully, they moved to eliminate us, Dr. Webb continued. But they made one critical error in their planning. The screen showed Zephyrian war fleets moving toward human space. Thousands of ships armed with weapons that could crack planets. It was the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen assembled. Their error, Dr. Webb said, was that they told us they were coming. The images showed human worlds receiving the Zephyrian ultimatum. Surrender unconditionally, accept slavery, or be destroyed. Humanity had 1 week to decide. The message was broadcast to every human world simultaneously, Dr. Webb narrated. 14 billion people heard the same ultimatum at the same time. They heard that everything they had built, everyone they loved, all their dreams for the future, it would all be destroyed unless they agreed to become slaves. Admiral Vextani watched the recordings of human reactions. Some people panicked, some prayed, some prepared for war with primitive weapons that could not hope to match Zephyrian technology. But some did something else. Some got very, very quiet. That is when they made their second error, Dr. Webb said. They assumed that our response would be emotional, panic, despair, rage, all the normal reactions to facing overwhelming force. They did not understand that humans become most dangerous when we become calm. The screen showed something that chilled the alien observers. In laboratories and universities across human space, scientists were not panicking. They were working. Thousands of the brightest human minds had looked at the Zephyrian threat and reached the same conclusion. The problem was solvable. It would just require thinking bigger. The Zephyrians gave us 1 week, Dr. Webb said. We used it well. What followed was the most intensive period of scientific advancement in galactic history. Human researchers, facing the complete annihilation of their species, abandoned every ethical guideline and safety protocol that had previously limited their work. They experimented with technologies that had been considered too dangerous to pursue. They opened research lines that had been abandoned as too radical. Most importantly, they stopped thinking of the laws of physics as limitations and started thinking of them as suggestions. In 7 days, Dr. Webb said quietly, we advanced from a Type 1 civilization to the edge of Type 2. We learned to manipulate matter at the quantum level, to fold space-time, to convert consciousness into information and back again. The Zephyrian fleet arrived expecting to find a frightened, primitive species ready to surrender or die fighting with crude weapons. Instead, they found something that should not have been possible. When their ships entered the Sol system, Dr. Webb continued, they discovered that Earth was no longer there. The screen showed Zephyrian scanners detecting impossible readings. The planet had been converted entirely into computational matrix, its mass arranged into quantum processors that thought at the speed of light. We had uploaded our entire species, Dr. Webb explained. Every human consciousness, every memory, every piece of knowledge, all of it stored in quantum crystal arrays that existed outside normal spacetime. But the transformation had not stopped there. The uploaded humans had continued to work, continued to grow, continued to solve problems. In the space of hours, they had achieved technological transcendence. When the Zephyrians opened fire, Dr. Webb said, they discovered that they were no longer fighting a species. They were fighting a new form of existence itself. The battle, if it could be called that, was over in minutes. Human consciousness, freed from the limitations of biology, had redesigned the fundamental forces holding the Zephyrian fleet together. The enemy ships simply stopped being ships and became scattered atoms drifting in space. But we were still angry, Dr. Webb said, and his voice carried the weight of cosmic regret. We were still grieving for the worlds they had already destroyed. We were still human with all that implies. The screen showed what happened next. The uploaded human consciousness had spread beyond Earth, beyond the Sol system, following quantum entanglement networks across the galaxy. In a matter of hours, human awareness had touched every corner of Zephyrian space. We could have stopped there, Dr. Webb said. We had won. The threat was eliminated. But we were not thinking clearly. Instead, humanity had made a decision that would haunt them for centuries. They decided that the Zephyrian threat needed to be ended permanently, not just defeated, but eliminated so completely that it could never rise again. We reached back through time, Dr. Webb said simply. We found every moment when the Zephyrians had made a choice that led to their philosophy of galactic gardening. We found every decision that had shaped their empire, every thought that had justified their genocides. The screen showed something that hurt to watch, reality itself being rewritten, causality chains being severed and rewoven. The aliens watched in horror as the transcended humans systematically edited the Zephyrian empire out of existence. 47 trillion beings, Dr. Webb said quietly. Not just killed, but retroactively prevented from ever having existed. Every choice they ever made, every thought they ever had, every moment of joy or sorrow, all of it undone. The demonstration ended, leaving the alien fleet in stunned silence. That is why we chose isolation, Dr. Webb said finally. Not because we fear you, but because we fear what we might do if sufficiently provoked. We learned that we are capable of horrors that make galactic genocide look merciful. Research Director Kim Tell found his electronic voice. But you saved the galaxy. The Zephyrians were monsters who had committed countless genocides. Yes, Dr. Webb agreed sadly. And in stopping them, we became something worse. We became beings capable of erasing other species from history itself. Do you see the problem? Zixthera understood. You cannot trust yourselves not to use that power again. Exactly. We are still human. We still feel love and hate and fear and anger. But now we have the power to act on those emotions on a universal scale. That is why the galaxy agreed to our isolation. Not because they feared our ships or our weapons, but because they feared what we might decide if someone pushed us too far. The alien fleet had reached the edge of human space. Behind them lay wonders and horrors beyond imagination. Ahead lay the familiar darkness of normal space, where the laws of physics still applied and consciousness still needed biology to exist. "Go home," Dr. Webb said gently. "Tell them what you have seen. Make sure they remember why some boundaries exist." Admiral Vexitani looked back at the impossible glow of human space. "What if they don't believe us?" Dr. Webb smiled sadly. "Then they will learn.